Okay, so while I'm out today, you're going to be working on this functions extension on your own after you've finished your quiz and you've checked your homework answers from the inverses. We're going to be walking through this a piece at a time using this video and inputting answers as we go. So in question 1, we're given f of x and g of x, and we're asked to find several different things in parts A through E. I'm going to give you a push on getting started in part A, and then you're going to work through part E on your own. So if we are supposed to, in A, find f of a plus 5, we need to remember that things we've been asked to find so far are things like f of 2. If I asked you to find f of 2, this means you would take your f of x function, take out its x, and in place of its x, put in 2. We've also found things like f of g of x, which meant take your f of x function, remove its x, and in place of its x, put in g of x. So given that information and what we've done there, f of a plus 5 means for us to take our f of x function, remove its x, and in place of its x, put in what's in the parentheses, a plus 5. And then work that out as far as you can go. Remembering there is no equal sign, it's not equal to 0, you don't need to solve. So use that hint and that bit of information to go ahead and work parts A through E. In question 2, we're going to do some more function composition with f of g of values or g of h of values, or with x's in there. This will give you some extra practice with this function composition prior to your tests in parts A through parts G. And while we're on this page, go ahead and cross out questions 3 through 5. Now, starting in question 6 and going through the following page, we have some extensions on function inverses. So a couple things that we know here. In question 6, we're told a function f of x has these values. F of 2 equals 5 and f of 4 equals 5 as well. You could write it as f of 2 equals 5 and f of 4 equals 5. You could also write these as ordered pairs, 2, 5, and 4, 5. So it tells us then to give us the coordinates of 2 points on the inverse graph. Remember from when we were talking about inverses, we said everything with inverses, the x's and the y's switch. So if I give you 2 points on the original graph, the inverse graph has points that are the same x and y but flipped backwards. So that means I would have a point f inverse of 5 is now 2, and f inverse of 5 is 4. Part B asks us to explain why the inverse of f of x is not a function. Well, if you looked at those 2 points as ordered pairs on the inverse, you would recognize that when you graph them, they do not pass the vertical line test. So in the same way, question 7 asks us to take information about either the original function f of x or the inverse function f inverse, and then use that information to write a fact about the other one. So in part A, if I'm given a fact about f of x, I write as an answer a fact about f inverse. If I'm given a fact about f inverse, I use that to write a fact about the original f of x. So that will continue for 7 parts A through, that actually continues through part 8 and 9, 10. 11 is a little bit more function operations, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then 12 is more f of g of using inverses. So my last hint to you in getting through question 12 is that here you've been given a table of values for f of x. You could write all of these as ordered pairs if you wanted to. 10, 7, 5, 10. These are all points for f of x, where this table over here is points for g of x. So using what we talked about back in questions 7 and 8, if you have these following points for f of x, could you write points for f inverse of x? Well, yeah, we know just the X's and the Y's flip-flop. So maybe before you get started on question 12 answering any parts A through E, you should go ahead and write down a set of points for F inverse and G inverse. When you are done with all parts minus the questions that we crossed out, go ahead and scan this using either your iPad or your phone and submit it to the 2.6 assignment on Canvas.